So I've heard that Keychron has always been the most good enough option when it comes to mechanical keyboards, but this particular model, the K8 Pro, stood out to me for a number of reasons. We'll be unboxing it in this video, so stick around to the end for a typing test and my initial impressions. First off, I love the box that this comes in. All the details have this holographic finish and it looks absolutely incredible. This even extends to the branding and logo on the side. The back of the box shows a few different colors, but I've never seen any other option than the black one with the red and gray keys. I know Keychron sells other colored keycaps like this, but I've never actually seen them in a pre-packaged option. Keychron advertises this as a TKL or 10 keyless keyboard. Basically, that just means if you were to take a full-size keyboard and chop off the numpad. As a Mac user, I do appreciate that this keyboard comes pre-installed with Mac keys. It does have Windows compatibility, even including Windows-specific keycaps in the box, but it's so hard to find a mechanical keyboard that actually puts Mac users first. This is something that I love about keyboards like this. I'm a little tired of having to set my keyboard aside to charge when it's low on battery, so the option to use it wirelessly or with a direct wire connection is absolutely amazing. Screw-in stabilizers and sound-absorbing foam. This is one of the things that really attracted me to this particular model. There was a lot of effort put into this keyboard to make it sound as good as possible right out of the box. I've listened to multiple sound tests of Keychron keyboards, and the difference between this model and the others is absolutely staggering. Not to mention the fact that this keyboard is upgradable. If I want to swap out the stabilizers or the switches at some point, Keychron does include some tools in the box to make this happen. More on that later. Also, this model has RGB, so that's fun. Supposedly, this keyboard can last up to 4 weeks without backlighting. That's fine. Alrighty, let's open this thing up. By the way, before we actually look at what's inside, the K8 Pro does come with a few different switch options. So here's a quick 30-second rundown of the differences between them. First, you have blues, aka clickies. These need a bit more force to press and create a mouse click sound whenever you press them. They're a bit loud, but some people find them nicer to press. Then you have reds, aka linears, which need less force and have a smoother, more consistent feel when pressing them. They're a bit quieter and they're typically used by gamers. Finally, you have browns, aka tactiles. These have a bit of a tactile bump to them whenever the key registers a press, and this makes them nicer for everyday typing. This particular model that I'm using has brown switches. Okay, summary over. Let's see what's in the box. Everything in the box is protected by this nice layer of foam. Taking that off, we get to see all the goodies inside. We have a quick start guide, a guide for how to align the switches, extra keycaps for Windows, a really nice braided USB-C cable, and a couple of tools for replacing parts. So I think these tools in particular are used to help remove some of the components of the keyboard. So I think this is supposed to be a keycap puller, and I think this right here is supposed to be a switch puller. Alrighty, time for the main attraction. So I got the model with the aluminum frame, which might explain the extreme heft from this keyboard. But first impressions, this thing is basically a heavy, chunky brick, and I absolutely love it. Don't expect to be taking this thing places other than your desk, but boy is it nice. Once you let the keyboard out, you'll find a little manual which tells you everything you need to know about the K8 Pro, how to set it up, connect to multiple devices, etc. Wow, I literally can't go over how heavy this thing is. Something that probably adds to its weight is just how tall it is. Most of the keyboards are usually designed to be thinner and lower profile, but this one is just the opposite. It's pretty tall, and if you're not used to something this high, you may need some time to adjust to it, or you might want to consider buying a wrist rest to make it more comfortable. Unfortunately, the backlighting doesn't shine through the keycaps, as you'll see later, but they can be replaced down the road, and they honestly feel really nice as is. Here's nothing. So I find it interesting that these particular keycaps have very narrow touch points, because I've seen a lot of mechanical keyboards in the past that tend to have much wider keycaps. Everything kind of looks a bit more flush, but I kind of like how they have this whole smaller surface, so it kind of makes it a bit easier for you to hit the key directly, so you kind of force yourself to be more accurate with your typing. First impressions, I'm absolutely loving this thing. This thing is so cool, and I literally can't get over how heavy this thing is. Something I noticed is that it kind of has a bit more of that marbly sound / feeling when typing compared to other keyboards that I've tried. Also, compared to something like the MX Mechanical from Logitech, the keys don't require as much force to press, and there seems to be less of that tactile bump. Initial feeling is great, but we'll be putting it to an actual test in just a bit. In the meantime, there are a couple of switches on the side for switching between macOS and iOS, and Windows / Android, as well as switching between Bluetooth and wired mode. That being said, the text is incredibly small, so it's a bit hard to read. Also, there's a USB-C port on the side, which is why the braided cable from earlier is right angle. Not only is it for charging, but it can even be used for wired mode. Also, I love the RGB effects on the keyboard. That's pretty. Now it's time for an actual typing test. So far, this keyboard is super easy to type on. I feel as if my overall typing is more accurate than with other keyboards. This was definitely true on the second test as well.
There we go.
Even after the third test, typing was a fantastic experience. The sound, the feeling, everything.
So before this, I was using the Logitech MX Mechanical Mini, and some of the changes or some of the differences that I'm noticing between that and this is that keys seem a bit easier to press on this, and also these keycaps, because they have the smaller surface, it almost kind of feels like I'm almost being forced to press the middle of the key in a sense. I'm also noticing that I don't really seem to get as many accidental presses because of that, and I think it's kind of helping contribute to the overall accuracy of my scores. Honestly, first impressions, I definitely recommend this thing. It's got a good weight to it, it feels really nice, really well built, it feels absolutely incredible to type on, it sounds really, really good. So if you're looking for a good keyboard, I would definitely recommend this.
Anyway, thanks for watching. Feel free to go watch this video next and subscribe to become a Jenny, that's what I call my fans, and I'll see you all next week. Adios. They will be pushing the FIFINE Ampligame A8 microphone to its limits to see if it's truly the best streaming microphone for under $50. We'll be setting up the A8, testing its sound in different positions and orientations, trying out the onboard controls, and seeing how well the included accessories function. We'll even put it up against my current audio setup, which costs over twice the price, to see how much value the Ampligame can deliver and what it needs to sacrifice to deliver that value at such a cheap price. But before we get started, a huge thanks to Ted from FIFINE for sending this microphone out for review. That being said, all thoughts and opinions that I share in this video are entirely my own. I have the freedom to say whatever I want about this microphone. This is going to be a completely honest, unbiased review. But before we get into the review, let's do a quick unboxing. First and foremost, FIFINE is pretty generous with the accessories they include. In the box, you get the microphone itself, a stand with an attached shock mount, a detachable pop filter, a pivoting adapter, a 6.6 foot or 2 meter USB-C to USB-A cable, and a user manual. The microphone and stand are made entirely out of plastic, but the pop filter is made out of metal and has a couple of small pegs for attaching to the front of the shock mount. The pivoting adapter is also plastic and is used to attach the microphone and its shock mount to an external boom arm. Now let's set up the microphone to see how it works. So I just got this microphone plugged into my computer, and thankfully this is a USB microphone, so it was super simple to set up. All to do was just take the USB-C end and plug that into the microphone, and then I had to take the USB-A end and plug that into my computer. Now I do use an M1 MacBook Air, so I had to use a USB-A to USB-C adapter to plug that in. But thankfully, because it is USB, you don't need any additional hardware or interfaces or anything like that. I tested a little bit of the accessories as well as the sound test a little bit. And honestly, I'm really impressed. I love the way this sounds. I really like the way the accessories operate. And we will be testing more of that later on to kind of do it a bit more in depth. The Ampligame has quite a few onboard controls for adjusting the way it operates. On the back, you have a gain knob for adjusting volume, along with a touch-sensitive button for changing the color of the RGB. On top, you have a touch-sensitive mute button along with LEDs that indicate whether or not you're muted. Underneath, you have a USB-C port for power, along with a headphone jack so you can monitor your audio in real time. FIFINE also includes a bunch of different RGB options to match the microphone to your setup, including static colors, animated gradients, as well as a full spectrum gradient. FIFINE also makes the microphone in a few different color options. I'm currently using the black model, but the Ampligame is also available in white and pink. According to the box, it also says it's available in blue, but I personally haven't seen that model anywhere. So now I'm going to start playing with the gain knob on the back a little bit just to kind of see how it affects the volume of the microphone. So right now I'm speaking into the microphone right in front of it at about 50% gain, and this is how it sounds. Now I'm speaking about 25%, about the same distance away from the microphone. This is how it sounds. Back at 25%, this is how it sounds. Now I'm back at 50%, this is how it sounds. Now I've turned this up to about 75% volume, and this is how it sounds. And now this is all the way up at 100% volume, and this is how it sounds. So now I'm going to test the capacitive mute button on the top. So right now I'm speaking into the microphone. The mute button is currently off, so if I tap the mute button, and now the mute button is back off, and you should be able to hear me. So now I'm tapping on the dash to see how this microphone sounds with the included shock mount. Tapping on the shock mount itself. This is how the microphone sounds when I'm using the included pop filter. This This is how the microphone sounds when I'm not using the included pop filter. This is how the microphone sounds when I'm using the Stedman ProScreen 101, which should be a pretty similar pop filter to the one included. So now I have the Ampligame plugged into my MacBook Air directly with a USB-C to USB-C cable. This is not the included cable that came with the microphone. This is just a separate one that I had lying around. As you can see, it works really well. I just wanted to test this out for anyone who doesn't necessarily want to mess with adapters or anything like that. Maybe they have just USB-C ports on their computer. You can just plug this straight into your computer with a USB-C to USB-C cable. So now I want to test the microphone in a few different positions. So right now you're hearing me right up on the microphone without the included pop filter to test the proximity effect. Now I'm right up on the microphone with the included pop filter on, and this is how it sounds. Now I'm speaking into the microphone right in front of me, and this is how it sounds. Now I have it on the desk right in front of me, about 6 inches away, and this is how it sounds. And now I have the microphone just off camera right over here, and this is how it sounds. So now I've mounted the microphone on my boom arm. I currently have it about 6 inches away from my mouth, facing down toward the corner of my mouth, and this is how it sounds. Now I have it right in front of me, directly facing my mouth, about 6 inches away, and this is how it sounds. And now I have the microphone right off to the side of me, facing directly towards my mouth, about 6 inches away, and here's how it sounds. Now I'm typing on the Keychron K8 Pro with Keychron G Pro Browns while I talk, and this is how it sounds. Now I'm typing on the Keychron K8 Pro with the microphone mounted on my boom arm, and this is how it sounds. So now I want to compare this against my current audio setup. For all the videos I've made up to this point, I've used a Samson Meteor on the newer boom arm with the Stedman ProScreen 101 pop filter. In total, the MSRP for each of these is $50 to $70 for the Meteor, $40 for the pop filter, and about $30 for the boom arm. That means this entire audio setup costs around $120, which is about 2.5 times what the FIFINE mic cost with the included stand, shock mount, and pop filter. This is the Ampligame right in front of my mouth to test proximity effect. This is the Meteor right in front of my mouth to test the proximity effect. This is the Ampligame a bit further away from my mouth. This is the Meteor a bit further away from my mouth. On the desk in front of me, on the desk in front of me, and on the desk just out of camera. And on the desk where the microphone would be off camera, but is pretty much off camera anyway. This is the Ampligame on a boom arm facing the corner of my mouth. This is the Meteor on a boom arm facing the corner of my mouth. On a boom arm right in front of my mouth. On a boom arm right in front of my mouth. And on a boom arm facing the side of my mouth. And on a boom arm off to the side. Typing on the Keychron K8 Pro with the microphone on the boom arm. Typing on the Keychron with the Samson Meteor on a boom arm. This is the Ampligame with me typing on the Keychron. This is the Meteor with me typing on the Keychron K8 Pro. This is how the Ampligame sounds without a pop filter. This is how the Meteor sounds without a pop filter. This is how the Ampligame sounds with the included pop filter. This is how the Meteor sounds with the included pop filter from the Ampligame. This is how the Ampligame sounds with the ProScreen 101. And this is how the Meteor sounds with the ProScreen 101. This is how the Ampligame sounds when hitting the desk. This is how the Meteor sounds when hitting the desk. This is how the Ampligame sounds on a boom arm while hitting the desk. This is how the Meteor sounds on a boom arm when hitting the desk. So after listening back to the comparison, I honestly think that the FIFINE did a really good job during that comparison. It really spoke for itself in those tests. It pretty much outperformed the Meteor in pretty much everything that we tested it in. It did better at blocking vibrations, blocking those plosives, even without the pop filter. It did better at blocking the keyboard, and overall, it just looks really nice, and it did a really good job. My only concern is the position of the volume knob. I noticed during the gain test, it was a little fiddly to work with because of the way it's positioned back here underneath the shock mount. I think it would work a lot better if maybe it was up here in the front, or maybe if it was like a dial at the bottom. I think it would just be a lot easier to work with that way. But honestly, if you're looking for a good solid microphone on a budget, I really would highly recommend this thing. Like, even if you're not a streamer, it's just a good microphone full stop, and it really punches above its price point, and I would definitely happily recommend it to anyone who's looking for something like this. If you want to pick this up or anything else that I mentioned, then be sure to check out the links in the description, and also feel free to subscribe for more reviews like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all around. Adios. I've been using the beyerdynamic DT770 Pros for about 7 months at this point, and in this video I'm going to share my thoughts on them and whether or not you should buy them for yourself. Build quality is nothing special. The plastics do feel a little bit cheap, but they do have metal arms, cloth ear pads, which collect a lot of lint by the way, and a pleather headband. Both the ear pads and the headband are replaceable, but unfortunately not the cable, which is also 10 feet long by the way. Yeah, it's a little long. That being said, people do tend to own them for at least 8 years before they finally break on them, and personally on my own set, I haven't seen any noticeable wear and tear after 7 months. Comfort is also amazing with somewhat firm ear pads, but also a really comfortable headband. I personally have trouble wearing headphones for long periods of time, but when I wear these, I can pretty much wear them for long stretches of time. That being said, they do tend to get a little bit uncomfortable with glasses if you wear them for too long, and for those cases, I do find that AirPods Pros are the most comfortable option. Sound quality is also absolutely amazing. There's a lot of top end, but I do find them a bit easier and more enjoyable to listen to than my AirPods Pros. Plus, all that top end helps make the details in music stand out a bit more. The AirPods do have a touch more bass to my ears, but the DT770s have much fuller bass, which I personally think sounds better. Also, the 770s sound so much wider and more open. Everything feels deeper and more separated. That being said, the cloth earpads do tend to leak a bit of sound, and they don't really block out external noise that well, so just keep that in mind. The accessories that it comes with are also mostly useless. It's pretty much just a thin nylon bag, which has absolutely no protection whatsoever, and a quarter-inch adapter, which isn't going to plug into anything you own. That being said, if you're wanting really good music for at-home use, which you can get at a good price, then I would definitely recommend these for you. That being said, just be sure to get the 32 ohm version, which has a shorter cable, pleather ear cups, and can run out of pretty much any device that you own. But if you want headphones that you can use pretty much anywhere in any circumstance, then I definitely would not recommend these, and instead recommend that you get some earbuds or some wireless headphones instead. To me, these are just an additional set of headphones for people who really just want to enjoy their music. And because you can't really use them anywhere, they can't replace wireless earbuds, but instead they complement them. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next week. Adios. macOS can be a bit difficult for newer users, but whether you're new to macOS or an experienced user, the apps I'm going to share with you today will make your experience so much easier, and you'll probably find that using your Mac will never be the same. If you are new to macOS, your last computer probably had the ability to snap windows to different areas of your screen. Unfortunately, macOS is the only one out of the 3 major operating systems that do not have this feature built in. But thankfully, there are third-party apps that can bring this feature to Mac. The one I use in particular is called Magnet, and it has a number of features for managing your app windows, such as the ability to drag them to edges or corners to snap them, as well as keyboard shortcuts to do basically the same thing. While it's not as robust as Windows' built-in system, it does make the experience of managing app windows in macOS a lot easier. But as much as I've come to rely on Magnet for my day-to-day tasks, there's only one app that I've come to use about as much as Magnet. This is an app called Yoink, and it's basically like a sort of shelf for moving files around. Think of it as like cut and paste on steroids for files. Plus, you can even use the share menu to add files directly to the shelf, which is great if an app doesn't have an easy way to save or export files. I use this all the time for organizing files in Finder, including those for my channel. There's also a version for iOS as well, but personally I just use the Mac version and it works really great. Now, one feature in macOS that can be pretty useful is the ability to use macOS's optical character recognition to copy text from photos. But sometimes it's not the most accurate, or maybe you just want to copy text from areas other than photos. photos. And this is where the next app comes in. This app is called Text Sniper, and it basically allows you to copy text the same way that you take a screenshot. You just press Command-Shift-2 and you're able to drag an area on your screen, and once you do this, it'll copy the text that you just selected to your clipboard. I actually found myself using this app a lot more often than I thought I would. It's a quick, easy way to copy and paste text without formatting from practically anywhere that has text. But of course, managing text easily like this goes beyond just software. You also need good hardware to make it as streamlined as possible. For example, having a good keyboard that's quick and easy to type on is absolutely critical for quickly typing and managing text in things like documents or emails. So go check out this video next to learn about one of my all-time favorite keyboards that's made tasks like these so much easier compared to other keyboards. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you over there. Adios. Desk setup tours are everywhere on YouTube, but not everyone can just go out and buy a completely new desk setup. Sometimes it's best to upgrade piece by piece. Which pieces are worth upgrading first? Well, today I'm going to walk through my own setup to point out which upgrades are worth investing in depending on your specific needs. First and foremost, I use a standing desk, which has been extremely useful for me. It's great to be able to switch between sitting and standing throughout the day, especially since standing can help you passively burn calories. Personally, I think that if you're considering an option like this, it's definitely worth a go. That being said, if you like the desk you currently have, you could pick up a standing desk converter like this one without having to buy a completely new desk. I currently use a standing desk from Uplift, but if you're wanting to get the most bang for your buck, I've had a bit of experience with the FlexiSpot standing desk, which I personally believe is the best value standing desk out there. Otherwise, if you're wanting a converter, consider something like the Mop Z, which can raise your laptop to standing height and be taken with you practically anywhere. But of course, anytime people work at their desks, it's usually at their computers. For most people, a new computer may not be the most economical upgrade, but of course people buy computers for all different reasons, so I can't really give a specific recommendation about whether you should or not. If you're satisfied with the computer you have now and you don't have a real specific need or reason for upgrading, then there's nothing wrong sticking with what you have and waiting until an upgrade is a bit more viable. Personally, my daily driver is a base model M1 MacBook Air, and so far it's been perfect for everything I've needed it for. It's surprisingly powerful, and I never find myself thinking about the battery life. Anytime I do use my computer at my desk, I tend to dock it in this 12 South book arc, which effectively just kind of stands the computer on its side. Typically, computer stands come in two different variations. There are docks kind of like this, as well as elevating stands that let you use your computer as a second display. If you don't have one already, you might consider getting even a somewhat inexpensive one so that it can effectively make better use of the space on your desk, whether that's giving you more desk space with a dock, or giving you a better experience using the space your computer already takes up with an elevating stand. Now, even though elevating stands can effectively turn your laptop into a sort of pseudo mini desktop setup, docks usually require you to have some sort of external display since you can't use the computer while it's docked. The one I currently use is the S80A from Samsung, but whichever model you get, I personally found that having a big display like this is extremely helpful for productivity. Sometimes it really helps to just have that extra space so you can move things around or see things a bit more clearly. That being said, if you plan on getting a monitor, consider getting one that's at least 27 inches. If you get one that's any less, you might find yourself wishing you had something just a bit bigger in the future. 27 inches in general seems to be a pretty good sweet spot between cost and size. On top of my monitor, I have a BenQ light bar. This effectively gives me a bit of extra light that fills up my workspace. Something like this is great if you just need a bit of extra focus light, but unless you're trying to save as much space as possible, you could probably just get the job done just as easily with a desktop task light. That being said, I really enjoy how low profile the BenQ option is, and it just creates a really nice fill light which makes it a bit easier to focus. Also, it keeps the desk cleaner, and I can tell you from personal experience that a cluttered desk equals a cluttered head. Of course, anytime you use a monitor, you kinda need to have an external mouse and keyboard. I used to use an MX Keys from Logitech, which is my personal recommendation if you're looking for a keyboard like this, but nowadays I use the K8 Pro, which is a mechanical keyboard from Keychron. Not only is it one of the most solidly built keyboards I've ever used, but the typing experience is absolutely incredible. It sounds amazing, and the keys require so little force to press compared to other keyboards that I've used. Also, the MX Master 3 mouse that I've been using for the past few years is literally literally the best mouse I've ever used. I know it can sound a little weird to say that about a mouse, but seriously, this is the most well-designed and well-thought-out mouse I've ever used. The scroll wheel effectively works through magnets, so it's super smooth, and it has programmable buttons that are put in really intuitive places. If you sit at a computer all day, you might consider putting keyboards and mice higher up on your list of upgrade priorities. Honestly, switching to a mechanical keyboard like this, I tend to feel much more efficient than I otherwise do with some other keyboards. That being said, mechanical keyboards can be a bit louder than typical keyboards, so just keep that in mind. Also, the Master 3 has pretty much given me no reason to use any other mouse. It really is that good, especially since the 3S replaced the original. Whenever I do use my mouse and keyboard, I tend to use them on a desk mat. The one I use is the Orbit Key Desk Mat, which is effectively a dual layer mat with wool and vegan leather. But honestly, unless your desk has a soft surface or you just tend to be a bit rough on your desk, a desk mat may not really be the most necessary upgrade. If you find yourself in a lot of Zoom calls or Teams meetings, there are usually two things that you need to get the job done: a webcam and a microphone. Since I have an M1 Mac along with an iPhone, I literally just lean my phone up against the monitor and use the continuity camera in macOS, and that tends to work really well for things like FaceTime calls. If I really needed a good angle, I might just use a small tripod like the Manfrotto Pixie. But if you don't have an iPhone or an M1 Mac, you might want to look into getting an external webcam. It's a similar story for the microphone. The iPhone mic is totally usable for FaceTime calls, and if you're in a relatively quiet environment, you might be able to get away with using your webcam's microphone. But in general, having something like a USB mic will typically give you better sound and in some cases, better noise projection. Condensers like the Samsung Meteor will tend to pick up more of your surroundings, but they can usually be placed off camera, while dynamic microphones like the Samsung Q2U need to be placed right in your video feed close to your mouth, but they'll typically do a much better job projecting sound. Now, I'm a big fan of using headphones over speakers, and my personal favorites are the beyerdynamic DT770 Pros. They're not wireless, but they're super reliable and they sound amazing. If I needed a wireless option, I just use my AirPods Pros. If you really care about sound quality for things like music or movies, having a good quality set of headphones like these can be really awesome. And what's great is that if you did need an external microphone, you could even buy a headset with a boom mic, which is usually designed for video calls anyway. Unfortunately, those may not sound as good for things like music and such as a dedicated set of headphones would. If you're interested in picking up anything I mentioned today, everything will be linked in the description. In the meantime, check out this playlist to watch reviews of some of the products I mentioned if you'd like to learn more about them. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and I'll see you over there. Adios. So a while back, I stopped using the typical porcelain mugs for coffee because it gave me a number of problems that were solved by this, the 14-ounce YETI mug, or should I say, 3 of them. And in this video, I'm going to discuss whether you should pick one up for yourself and also why they can't fully replace porcelain mugs. Build is absolutely solid with all stainless steel and a durable powder coat on the colored models, but even though these are technically dishwasher safe, I like to hand wash them anyway to protect the colors. And definitely don't drop these on tile. It's stainless steel, but it'll still dent or scratch if you give it the chance. Something YETI likes to tout on their drinkware is the triple hull grip, which is basically just a fancy way of saying big handle. But whatever they call it, I definitely find it comfortable to hold even though it isn't contoured like a typical porcelain mug. Flat surface I think gives me a bit more leverage and it has plenty of finger room. Also, this mug made me realize just how much I can't live without a lid on my mugs. I like brewing a 12-ounce cup in the morning, and porcelain mugs tend to fill up pretty quickly with coffee and milk, and that just makes it so much easier for it to slosh out. I mean, the last thing I want to do after I wake up is clean up a hot mess, but the lid isn't just for spills. It also helps trap the heat because this is an insulated mug. Plus, I feel way less funny about putting the lids in the dishwasher, and the lids have magnets, and magnets are fun. So, it's an insulated mug. Does it insulate? Well, I haven't run any scientific tests on this, but just from day-to-day usage, I tend to notice that with milk or creamer or whatever cold liquid you put in your coffee, it can stay at a pretty drinkable temperature for about 1 to 1.5 hours, although probably a bit closer to the 1 hour mark. And the less drink you have in your mug, the quicker it will begin to cool off. That being said, if all the liquid inside is hot from the get-go, it tends to get closer to 2 hours. So no, it won't keep your coffee hot all day and probably not even all morning, but I have found that in the morning it just makes coffee a bit more sippable. I can actually enjoy it without having to finish it before the room temperature does. Now, with all the great things I have to say, you might be thinking, well man, I guess it's time to grab about 50 of these and start stashing up my old mugs, so I guess I won't need them anymore. Well, Yeah, that's not entirely true. Even though Yeti mugs do tend to trap heat really well, that doesn't mean that they do trap it forever. And if your coffee gets too cold, you've got to microwave it in a mug that's safe for doing so. And metal isn't exactly known for being microwavable. So even with how great these are, if you do decide to get one like this for yourself, I still recommend keeping a porcelain mug on hand in case you ever need a reheat. And then of course there's also the competition factor. What about all the cheaper alternatives that you can buy instead of this? Well, honestly, I can't really speak to the competition because I haven't tried any of it myself. That being said, I personally think that the design alone is worth the price. The big old handle and the mag slider really set it apart from everything else. And it definitely helps if you're already in the YETI quote-unquote ecosystem, since you can pretty much just swap out the lids and such if need be. I mean, I literally have 3 of these. I think that kind of speaks for itself. So even though they tend to run for about $30, I still recommend it. It's durable, it's easy to wash, comfortable to hold, it retains heat really well, and it comes in fun colors. Plus, there are other sizes depending on what your needs are. There's a 10 ounce for more space efficiency, and there's even a 24 ounce for a big old load of coffee. Really, the only downside is the high price tag. But like I said, I can't compare these to the cheaper options because I've never owned them. But that being said, if you have something similar and you'd like to share your own experiences, please feel free to do so in the comments. Also, let me know if you plan to get one for yourself, and give a like if you got value out of this video. Look forward to hearing from you, and I'll see you all next week. Adios. So I've had the first gen AirPod Pros for about 2.5 years at this point, and even though the second gens are out, I wanted to share my thoughts on whether the first gens were still worth buying in 2023. Personally, I think these are some of the best built wireless earbuds for the money. Obviously, if you spend upwards of $400 on a different pair, you're bound to get some metal thrown into the build. But usually, even most $300 earbuds tend to feel poorly built, but these can actually withstand a few drops. I mean, the case does collect quite a few scratches, but they're never really noticeable unless you actually go looking for them. That being said, the case is both the best and worst part of them. It feels great, it has a metal hinge that feels good to open and close, but the LED on the front just doesn't really make sense. There are only 2 main colors that handle almost everything, and you never really know when amber means the buds are charging or low on battery, and so this means that I always end up with a dead set of earbuds even though I think they're charged. This is something that the Galaxy Buds Pro handled really well. You always knew whether the buds or case was low on battery or fully charged. That being said, the buds themselves are incredible. They're super small and lightweight, and the stem is genuinely useful for controls. They just don't have the swipe for volume controls like the Pro 2s, but the pressure sensors require just the right amount of force to feel like a solid cross between touch controls and physical buttons. Plus, they're literally the most comfortable earbuds I've ever worn. I could literally wear these all day long without my ears hurting. The only other earbuds that have ever come close for me are the Galaxy Buds Pro. After about 1 to 1.5 years, the earbuds started making some really loud staticky noises when using noise cancelling or transparency. It's almost like someone recorded themselves tearing paper and they're playing it back to you at 1000% volume, but only in the left ear. It's kind of annoying. So I just use them in off mode. Also, the right earbuds play pause control just isn't working anymore. It makes the click sound that it usually makes whenever you register controls, but it doesn't actually do anything. Everything else seems to work though. But I do really enjoy the sound quality. It's not as good as dedicated over-ear headphones, but they're clear and they sound really nice. That being said, their mid-range can be a little harsh sounding at times, at least to my ears. Noise cancelling is absolutely top notch, but some of the higher frequency sounds can get through a bit easily, like talking or running water. Transparency mode is some of the most natural sounding you can get, but there's still that slight hint of artificialness that you'll tend to find on earbuds like this. Mic quality is okay, it's nowhere near as good as an inline microphone, but as far as wireless mics go, this is good. Battery life has been sufficient for me, 4.5 hours on the buds, 24 with the case, but after nearly 3 years, the case doesn't seem to hold a charge quite as well as it used to, but the buds still last sufficiently long. That being said, the buds may not turn on if the case is dead, which means sometimes you go to pick up your earbuds and they're out of battery. All that being said, they do tend to come in at around $160 renewed, while the Pro 2s can be picked up for about $200 new. Unfortunately, you can't buy the AirPod Pro 1s new anymore, you can only do it for the Pro 2s. But if you're willing to go a bit higher, then the Pro 2s might be worth the extra money. Better sound, better noise cancelling, better battery life, more ways to charge with the Apple Watch charger, etc. All that being said, you may even want to wait until this fall when the iPhone 15 comes out with USB-C. At that point, the AirPod Pro 2s are rumored to be switching from Lightning to USB-C as well, so if that interests you, then you may want to wait a little bit. Otherwise, save a few bucks and go with the AirPod Pro 1s. They're still great, and I just use MagSafe to charge them anyway. Anyway, that's all for now. Adios!